Tanda ani sangna jela sangna.
Ne tin kurwale langar sape lungji are
Oh,
ani do jenta jento ti chiltar radi rangi che permiche ceremony rangla de permichelte rari semkang tejin hosti de kanji uma be rari gaya ge sombacham den de rari jalgi ji go amares tigi so the ti kaje nomboyna su che tubo amarwa watatena jinjige shebachi ridu marese dhungare di khundere induranda inada tiringazo dijije ne jamayankir ne tin kuna jamayankir te kana kaji chi chora
oh, lasso.
tambo konzo tambongazo dombaden dan kasan te kana tuare yona tuatang tuamena ngazo ndo
So, Geshe-la said that in the context of today's subject matter, this quote will be very pertinent, but also he'll send it to me and I can get a direct translation and actually we'll speak about it again. So this is indeed about what the Buddha had to say about whether the mind is self-knowing. So this topic that we have discussed about this self-knowingness, this mind knowing itself, being aware of itself, will be pertinent also in the upcoming weeks. And so here today, we'll start out, we'll do our opening prayers. And then if there are questions or people would like to bring up anything about what we've already covered or what we covered last week, where there's time for questions and answers. And after that time, then we can continue on in the text.
Yeah. Sangye chedan choki chonam la chanjo pardo dani kyatsun sage jinso ye pe chonam ji rola penjre sangye ndo parash sangye chedan choki chonam la chanjo pardo dani kyatsun sage jinso ye pe chonam ji rola penjre sangye ndo parash Sangye chedang choki chonam la chanchu pardo dani kyabsunja Sage jinso yepe chonam ki rola panjira sangye ndo parasho Semchen tamche dewa tang devi gyu tang lembara ki Semchen tamche dungal tang dungal ki gyu tang tawara ki Semchen tamche dungal mepe dewa tang minda wara ki Semchen tamche nyirin chadang nidang Nyamla ne bara kyurji simchen damje ewa na dewe gyudan dembara simchen damje dungal dan dungal ge gyudan tawara simchen damje dungal mebe dewa tan mindawara simchen damje nyirin chadan nidan ta nyamla ne bara kyurji simchen damje dewa dewe gyudan dembara kyurji simchen dungal dan dungal ge gyudan tawara Semchen tamche dungal mebe dewa tan mindawa. Semchen tamche nyirin chadan nidang tak tan nyamla nebara kyuruchi. Semchen tam dewa tan dewi gyudan lembara kyuchi. Semchen tam dungal tan dungal gi gyudan tawara. Semchen tamche dungal mebe dewa tan mindawa. Semchen tamche nyirin chadan nidang tak tan nyamla nebara kyuruchi. Sashibyoji Choje Medo Otam Jirani Nyale Yambani Sangye Jindo Mete idam guru rana mendala kanyataya.
Until enlightenment, I go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the accumulation of the practices of giving and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. Until enlightenment, I go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the accumulation of the practices of giving and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. Until enlightenment, I go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the accumulation of the practices of giving and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings be endowed with the happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings never be separated from joyful bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. May all sentient beings be endowed with happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings never be separated from joyful bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. May all sentient beings be endowed with happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings never be separated from joyful bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. This ground, spread with incense, adorned with strewn flowers, Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun, and the moon, I imagine as a Buddha land, and by offering it to you, may all living beings enjoy this pure land. Thus, meeting the teaching of the peerless teacher is due to the spiritual mentor's kindness. I dedicate this virtue for all living beings to be cared for by excellent spiritual friends. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryata Yami.
Kange tujingi zongwa tawa tamche pambechira tambechini tunje pe kodamte la cha za lo. Ya da. Diriyang azo chui karsonin. Dundra chinane kanga ruru chini ta semlingyure tangi kachishi gorwa. Ingyuranda nambe chui sede. So sementani semlingyure tena chusun rugore. Somlingyure matena chumi gyamche tongche bulna dugang pe zibu kazo jana chusun ruwa khaburta.
La.
Chumi pe gyamche da tongche ani zula khan zikpu jana chusun ru mindu nizore. Zula khan zikpu jana dugang ngagyal dan o ndendur dengam do jang ina. Zula khan jambare de chusun ruwa khabure. O kozo zula khan le ngazo ku zula khan zik jangi inse dende samda de jang ina. Kuno mata parwa. Chusun ru mare. Che namta tunro wala rangi sementang nyumonde kazo nguinzin bachene nyumonde ba jiruju ani gewe chode nguinzin bachene ngocha thoyo ku chu gore so ani ti chene kazo thupji ti kompor kone kondo peleagi tapshelen pepa ina tati chusumin ro tabyo mar tati yajiga damba chusun ru gore karan nyumon 견도 다 외와라 연전도 동거와 뺏게 버려 아니 강알이 지태베 갑라 덴디지 삼로 여행되는 집이라 강알 될란 돈은지 두그래 어따때 머리베 겐지 녀목이 겐지는 당아서 동알데 녀어래 데 인기를 머리바고 머리바 생인데 에 가르소래 Kulong rang chinzinda, zinzingi ki kenchini te che yondi kala, tat dungal manyo tab mindu samsamji lune kigruwa. Tat ingiri samsamji, ngune, tat chinchini ngi mari padang, rang chinzinda, damar zimbi zinzin te ngi la gyuni, te ngi ola mandraji tabshi chigi samsamji yongruwa. Yongnan donen che thukuda. 되게 전부를 다 오니.
So the ultimate purpose of the Dharma that we study together in our weekly sessions is to bring transformation to the mind. It's to really bring inner transformation. When the spiritual path that one studies brings about inner transformation, then we can really say this is accomplishing the Dharma. But when we rather maybe go to this very, very fine library full of Dharma texts in a way that we have great pride that we must go to this very special place, this big library or institute of all these fine texts and learning, actually that is an inauthentic motivation. And to do so only wanting to go to some particular place, a special place out of pride to study is actually an inauthentic motivation. And so it really comes down to having a very authentic motivation. An authentic motivation with regard to the Dharma is when we are studying in the context of being able to recognize our own inner afflictions and defilements and work on them to bring them to an end, to decrease them, and to further bring recognition and inspiration to the path of virtue and goodness and wholesomeness. And when our focus is thus, then it is guaranteed, it is really guaranteed that we will have an authentic motivation and bring about this transformation or accomplish the true Dharma. For virtue really has very, very true qualities. And this is very important. There are very true qualities that come from wholesomeness and goodness. And therefore, understanding all of this, when we meet with difficult circumstances, we can take them on willingly. We can face them with an understanding that due to former causes and conditions of ignorance and having a view of an egotistic attitude and a very, very strong clinging to true reality, that we have acted in a way that now we are experiencing the result. That result is misery, that result is suffering. And therefore, what to do? There is no other method. Already we have created these causes. And so we must necessarily experience them. And therefore we can really experience these with this understanding and willingly. So we must understand that coming out of an attitude of this unconscious ignorance, self-centeredness, clinging to true solid reality, we create situations, we act in ways that then bring upon ourselves situations of difficulty. And so within the context of our studies, we understand this. And so when we meet with difficulties, we can track that back, understand where it came from, and accept these willingly.
남부쪽에 또 샘타모등 문진 두고 가라. 샘타라게 여와기는 마시나 샘타모 문진 두비야 가보찌기로 와. 인디가라 시부지게 전부 차대요래. 샘타라. 때니 샘라 개베스나 미개베셈. 롱마탱기 샘. 되게 남이 마시나 때니 배 가보래. 고당 아주 장해야 돼. 시야 잠지 말에 시니 삼로다데 아니 배 돈다데 하고하지 하고하지니 아니 강 시비던달라 곰리 생과데 빼 미시브 그 깨침보래. 이거 이solang아서 곰바야 말어. 곰바 메디가라. 다디 렘상 젠도야 인가요.
Lamsang
젠도야.
Gendroyasana?
제 forget.
Oh, Jedroya.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
제소나 다 나마시기 여때한테 제소나 디 마시바던 라보 차바라. 제빠다 시방 갈승으로. 어다 때 인도가랑 아주 제루마 주자. 가도 툭툭 즉 섬당과대 빼게 깨침으로. 되바 삼바 곰바싱도 곰바싱이 디버체야들이. 만디네 제도 그래. 디네 제그 말해. 디켜버는도와. 저좀 좀 야마tal 해야 돼. 빼게 전부 차대요.
Mm-hmm. So the very essential meaning of practicing the Dharma comes down to understanding the nature of mind, coming to recognize mind's nature, one's own natural state, a recognition of the mind stream. And so in order to, which is very, very subtle, very, very fine thing to realize. And so to be able to come and realize that which is very subtle and very fine, one must study it and understand it both in its coarse and subtle levels. So one must really understand this mind, both in the coarse sense and in the subtle sense. And one must understand that the mind states can be positive and virtuous, or negative and non-virtuous, or neutral. And so we must come to recognize the mind in these states. In these core states, we can see virtue, non-virtue, and this neutrality. And it's not enough then just to learn about it and understand this on an intellectual level, but now we must train with it. We actually must, on a day-to-day basis, must get in touch and train with these different levels, come to recognize and train and really condition oneself. And so it's not enough just to learn about it and to know something. Then we need to reflect on the meaning. So we come to understand the different levels of mind, the virtues and non-virtues, and we must constantly on an ongoing basis reflect on the meaning of that which we have learned about these mind states. And so we learn to get in tune with this very, very fine nature of mind, and what is the meaning of mind itself, mind's nature, mind's continuum. And then, so we learn about it, and we reflect on the meaning. And again, we don't leave it there. Now we must habituate it. We must work with it. We actually must put it into practice. And right now, we're not familiarized with really working at these fine mental levels where we're really tuned in with what's going on and really training and encouraging the mind in certain attitudes and so forth. Because we don't really have a great amount of familiarity, it's not necessarily second nature. What happens is it's very, very easy to forget and to just slip back in whatever the old default was. So this is very, very easy for us to do, to just forget about it and to just go on as usual. But it's very, very important that we always stay tuned in and remember to be reflecting and training, because actually to forget about something is the same thing as not knowing about it. to having like not known in the first place. When we're in a state where we've forgotten, it's really the same thing as being in a state of not knowing. And so these two things, knowing and not knowing, are in direct opposition. And so what we really want to do is constantly be in a state of knowing, familiarizing, and training. So in order to do this, we must reflect often. And then actually this isn't, although we have these three separate ways we can divide what we're doing. We're learning, we're reflecting, and we're habituating or taking these things into practice. And although they, we can speak about them as three separate things, it's really important that that we bring them into an inseparable practice where we're taking this learning, the reflection and understanding on this meaning of what we've learned, and the taking it up all as one inseparable activity. And so in order for this to happen, we must not forget. So we always must reflect and just keep it in the forefront of our minds.
맞아 센 잠바다 우마 턴주와 같이 롤링 제약이 3대텔 디차디어라 계산가 맞아 같이 쉐러와 다티 임발라 센 잠베 에 도바카리 임바데티 수업지 하모거나 군인 저버저 다시 시그마라와 다센 잠바 신데라 가래요 또 지dem만 대바 취담제 삼기 다니도 켈링에 대강라 에 라리 이제기지거 센담베 라리즈데 가제 시바달라 카난 코난 초비 시바지당 아니 카칠리기 시바다 카날테 시반 랍그레 카칠리 시바스디가라 이 왕비 왕시 강가 카칠테기 시바 잡아래 라리된 카낭테기 시바 카나 코난 초비 시발라 그래
카나
코나 어 가능성을 납그래. 나리 어때도 돈다지 바래. 어때도 이 센자면 누구래? 아니 도대변 누구래? 다 우마 던주르에 라리 누구 말에? 아니 지든 누구래? 우마 던주르에?
지든
누구래? 자담 또 센잠바다 뚝딱 걸와 차기도 센잠이 치든 누구 말에 치담 제심기 다니도 그린 거래 에 우마 던지르 치든 누구 아래 라린 누구 말에 아니 군진 누구 말에 군지다 발전 센잠 마다 발전 우마랑기 반니게 군진 누구 말에
아니 지든 아니 디스 삼삼바 지든 아니 켈랑기요 말에
어여 말에
아니 디 지든 아니 세나 치로기든
지든 제대가 율 킬로니요 받지
올라서
세미탄이 빠져서발 맞봐 율문이 두바지나 다 센잠이 지든 된지도 거래
알았어
단나 우마 던지에 율문 두바다 켈링거 말도 우마 던지 치든 더다 jel기제다데 그 치로니 낭차디 남바샤라지 난거와 남바 유 치로니 샤르나지 난거와 대삼지르마도 양 그랑 추두두 둥되겠는데 셰겨 말이야 치던데 그래서 개발도 하고 가도 개천벌이 둥되지 숍지 저도 켈레나 다 집탕아도 야 전부 장면인자 가보러 걱정하고 나야 버려.
And so what we have spoken about in the teaching series most recently has been about the tenet systems of the mind-only school and the Prasangika Madhyamaka. What they accept, what they don't accept, what they assert, what they refute, and so forth. And it's really important that one has a good basic foundational understanding of what each of the tenet systems, these philosophical schools of thought, stand for. For otherwise, if one doesn't, then when these debated points come up, it's really hard to get an idea of what's going on in the debate. So when it comes to the mind-only school, basically speaking, again, not getting into great detail, but understanding the fundamental principles of this tenet system, this school of thought, is that they do assert and accept some level of substantial existence to phenomena. However, they do not accept that it is external, externally established and existing. And also, they posit that the mind has a self-knowing, that mind is self-knowing. And also the Sautantrika also do accept a self-knowing mind. And so in the mind-only school, there is a distinction between the faculties, the sense faculty functions and experience of taking in sensorial information, and what is called the storehouse consciousness, the storehouse consciousness, and a mental consciousness that is self-knowing. And Vaibhashika as well accept and posit this. However, Prasangika have a little bit, they have a different understanding. What they stand for is that there are external phenomena that appear externally. That being said, we'll get back to that. And also, they do not accept the storehouse consciousness, this consciousness, level of mental consciousness that the mind-only school do. They refute that. And so, although the mind-only school do posit some level of substantial existence and phenomena, they say that it is an internal experience that is happening within the mind, that actually the latent mental impressions are like coming to maturity, and it's all a mental experience. But the Prasangika, although they say that it is an external appearance, phenomena is experience is external, they deny any substantial existence to that external appearance. It merely appears. It appears like that out there, but it is not like that. And so these are some of the major differences between the two schools of mind only and Prasangika Madhyamaka.
다 sensambe rari ndo goya da karzana rari sensambe rari she goya da rari tupche yena mena da sensambe karzana tembe tale rari nyoa yo batu nyoa tale rari yo batu gorta
Oh, kale sunga.
temba yorwa kesang ngi ene be kesang lega jene tirin kesang kan cheba de tirin tengi ora ote te tola ti tale nyoa yo ba nyam nyoa yo ba ti tale rari yo ba tu gorta tembe tale kesang rari singi ji sheba gi sheba nyongen ji yoris 맞아 땡기도 왔어. 뒤라리 레라고 왔다.
Adi semsam pegi
센터
dapa.
벨고 센터
Mhm.
미센터에.
Mhm. Mhm. So now let's look a little bit closer at that term, self-knowing, the mind that knows itself. And so the mind only, for example, one of the ways that they support this assertion is they say that we have memory. The mind has the ability to remember the activities, for example, that we did previously, right? So one of the ways that mind-only school supports their assertion of self-knowing is that we can remember our past experiences. And so when they are supporting their point, they say, that's what they say, we can remember our experiences, right? So that's self-knowing because we remember, that is the mind remembering. So the mind has the ability to like know itself.
제산 템베탈레 뇨와 기타 뇨와텔라 랑용다 쟁용이 전에 쟁용다 숨에 차그래 랑용마던 로사민두 세다
Okay, rang again ani gonda kale ani rang
랑니지
ranga shen.
랑용다 쟁용 쟁용 제나다 투메드 차그레스
To
투바메베 차르고도 투사기는데 어떻게 대잉어래 되게 대잉어래 되게 대잉어래 저들가라 투사메 차르고도 빼 투메 탈르고도 다 랑용마던 루민도 대인데가라 셰바지기 유레 셰바지 자누마도 아니 셰베 유라 치중와 유 자난디민도 셰바지 자네 템베 다 템바 띵뇨와 되게 유라 셰바 코란지 자고도 시기와래
susungido
센삼베
semsampe.
디기다 진남 양가르와 진남데 라리팅이 봐 진베나 바친 진남 양가르와 자고 때레다 랑용 라리지 자고래 냠승 라리 셰바랑 냠승 라리지 랑리비 시자고다
Yenayang ani shen yonggi
쟁용 자두 미도 쟁용 자리나 베디 투사 차미도 베 타미도 탈도도
di kartu yomare.
데데베 투바메바지 차도도 쟁용 자나 데 딩용와데다 랑용마도 누르메라 셰비율라 셰바지 자나마도 젠다 균이 자선 루민도 시거래 센사베
And so one of the signs that they point to prove or to support their case for self-knowing, again, is memory. That one has the memory of one's own past activities. One can remember things that one has experienced. So doesn't make sense. They can't really use this argument in terms of remembering what others have done. It doesn't really support their case to point out a memory of what others have done that's happened in someone else's experience and someone else's mind stream, etc. But one can turn that back on oneself, they say, and remember one's own past experience. And so therefore, there is that recalling that which the mind has previously observed or perceived. And that's, they say, that remembering of self-experience, of previous self-experience, is a sign, and it is self-knowing, working as in function. That's actually it. so they say that that which is the object of the memory, that which is being observed and remembered, is mind itself, consciousness itself. So that's what Mind Only School is saying. Consciousness is aware of its past experiences. So that means consciousness itself is the object of observation.
같이 전주 나라 선점에 너바다 싫어 숨고 말와 가르자면 전주 숨시 율데 나렌테 개바시지 차디오래 선점 너바 생긴 시지 차디오래 다 전주에 타와기 선점 바칸데스 까고 요메데 디나 살프 숨고래 가상 까루도서
Chunjuk Nangla.
전주 나라
Mhm.
때마다 선점에 너바 싫어 숨고 말해 당가서 전주 야부 장국은지 선점에 답에 갑두기 좀 다른지 다음에 선점에 그도 너바도 장고한테 뺏게 쳐버려. 맞수 살도 장고인지 그 니네 살포해야 돼 가르쳐야 돼. 그 땅보 채도 저에 눌려야 돼. 케바 번지대 세지 자라 선점에 중 하공에 세지 자되어라. 우마 턴주인 타와라 하장기 꼼바이언데긴 아니베 선점에 타와라 꼼바이언데긴 딱 가상 갈루데 십타 이 숨고야 돼. 다 니나라 그 채도 저에 눌려야 돼. 우마 턴주라 장바슈 충분히 세지 인상 딱 두스니 가야그리 빠든 디는 빼 살고 되는 거래. 선자면 더바든 디는 시다 살고 말해. 딘디가 이제 니 삼삼라 내대 야보데 시고 말데. 선자면 중 또도서 라고야 돼. 그러면서 그 파 선자면 중데 하마고 이나 더바 섭지 하마고 이나 양 캔서 자르고더라.
And so, you know, here in the text that we're studying, The Way of the Bodhisattva. So this topic is coming up in this chapter. But what we must understand is that this Way of the Bodhisattva was composed for and in the context of the great institution of learning of Nalanda, who were all of the members were already great studied masters and experts and panditas of the topic. So you'll see that in these verses, it's not going into detail about the tenet systems as far as into great detail. If one were to want to read more, and it would be very beneficial to read more in detail about the tenet systems. One could read in the Jewel Garland of Tenets, and that would be actually a very favorable and good thing to do. But it's not really gone into detail here because they were already great experts in this topic. They were already great studied experts on Prasangika philosophy and mind-only philosophy. They had, were, already extremely qualified experts. And so therefore, there aren't details about the debate. Although the points of debate come up in these verses, the background information isn't there. And Geshe-la said that's why he is sometimes consulting other texts and using a commentary to really bring this all to a deeper understanding and light. And that's why it's not in the main text that we're studying. So one can study more about that in other texts, and it would be very, very good. Because it's really important to have a good functional, basic, fundamental understanding of the major assertions and negations of the different schools of Buddhist philosophy. It would just make the debate a little easier to understand.
지단에 셔럽 길리우 규리알로 로중고를 승도 대 가요 말 가르서 셔럽 리우 또 두대지겔 따위서는 룰링 망부지온도 갈라 따띠 두대지겔 따와 시발라 물로 망본 거르시그로와 규르멘도슬라 대 탁보래 뭐네 가 탁보래 따와 땅 아주 연 짱짱짱 타마 두던데 타와를 두용 거라
Jung,
연된데 짱네 아니 텔라 박사 선zamben 디리진 사레 너데빈 디리샤 선 우마벨 타완 디리샤 우마발라 우마라기 바레 아니 땡큐 바레 타와 털두데 땡큐 벨 타와 왔다 틴두가라 슈스 개침부도와 그 카요 말 타고레 맞아 선zam바단 루닝도 갈라 저 선zam벨 타와데 시고와데 빼 미스고 개침보레
And so, in a lot of cases, when it comes to teachings and commentaries and so forth on the way of the Bodhisattva, you find when you get to the 9th chapter, the chapter on wisdom, you'll find that it's actually not translated. And this is because when we get to this wisdom chapter, the wisdom chapter really holds great, profound, detailed, and very tough information on the 4 tenet systems, on the Vaibhashika, Sautantrika, mind only, and middle way school, of which there are also, additional divisions. And so oftentimes there will not be a discussion or a commentary on the wisdom chapter, because it would take many, 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 many years actually to go through and translate this properly and to go through this material properly. Not only that, not only in the context of time, but just when it comes to really grasping the meaning. So in order for it to be translated, the teacher, the translator, would really, really, really need to study and study and study and practice and contemplate and reflect until they themselves had a very personal, deep understanding where they had studied to the extent that there was now a realization of a deep understanding of the material, and then it could be translated. And then, this would be in the context of Vaibhashika, so Tantrika, mind only, and then, the 2 levels of middle way, all the way to the highest, to this Prasangika or consequentialist school of middle way. So, one should not feel like it's, any like their fault or badly for not being able to understand it, to come to a very quick, deep understanding of all of this, because it's very deep. It is important to understand, but is very, very like a long pathway to get this true understanding of the views of all of these schools.
야, 다 도스레 다 계속 좋아요. 그상되니.
And so now, what questions do you have about that you would like to bring up, or anything you'd like to discuss more about what we've gone over in the past, any of the previous verses or points or philosophical assertions, negations, etc.?
I have a question, if I might ask it, although it's maybe a little bit off the text. It's off a different text, but it's on the same subject of wisdom and dependent arising.
Okay.
If that's okay. check.
The shung dang shandak dang dralwe tendrel dang dralwe ki conditioner. Yes, it's okay.
Okay, so my question actually refers to His Holiness's commentary on Tsongkhapa's 3 principal aspects of the path. This is about verse 9, which is about dependent arising. And His Holiness makes a distinction between 2 kinds of dependent arising in relationship to 2 kinds of phenomena. Right, so there's two kinds of dependent arising and 2 kinds of phenomena. And the kinds of phenomena are impermanent phenomena, that conditioned impermanent phenomena, and unconditioned permanent phenomena. And the
unconditioned impermanent?
Unconditioned permanent and conditioned impermanent.
Oh, no, so, okay, so.
Now, unconditioned permanent phenomena is subject to dependent arising only in the sense that the mind names and designates it. This is how I am understanding the interpretation of the commentary. But I still don't understand how an unconditioned permanent phenomena can be dependent upon name and designation of the mind, because the way I understand those words, unconditioned and permanent, suggests that it in fact isn't dependent on anything, including the perception of the consciousness. So if Geshe-la could address that and explain, if he can, what is meant by that kind of dependent arising, the subtle dependent arising.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a kind of heavy question, but it really relates to what we're talking about.
Absolutely. Kensungye Geshe-la di lamson nam sum sikje gupa dangdralwe gi kolare di gyalwa rinpoche gi dralshe kyundu ani dene tendra la yewa ni yore dene mitakpeche duchegi tendra. Okay. Ene dumache duchegi tendral dan dumache. Okay. Duchegi kongi mixelgi triwore dene duma chepe laso laso kongi triwore dene gyawore bete di duma chegi re yena yang ani duma che sena dene ikandra ani mingdang takpa ani duma chena dene mingdang ming takpa ani yosamare
mingdang zasamji madota yulngwen tumdagenji gunyo marwa dije dan dimaji chhe kandrejina uma thangyulula mingdang zagi ba jasha tobi jasha zamjima thanya zamjima do yulngwen tumdagenji cheyo marwa
So in this unconditioned and permanent phenomena, okay, so lasso oh, lasso.
Kola ming de tandis dar ming kyang tayo sam geta ming dang 민당 자 얘니 또베 파자 점지마도 더 유릉원에 좀 되긴 째매인데 주진 뒤마치 영수소발을 켜봐 인자 두스질라고 왔다.
So first, what we must understand is that this term for this category is unconditioned dependent arising, is different than just being like when something is unconditioned, when we just use the term unconditioned alone by itself. It's important to understand that this is a term, unconditioned dependent arising or unconditioned interdependence. And it's not to be mistaken with just when something is unconditioned, when phenomena is unconditioned, when we just say something is unconditioned. And so this is something that is that is dependently unconditioned dependent arising via names and labels. And actually what's meant by this category is that the object possesses no true reality. It is only established via names and labels. The object itself is not established. And so yeah, did that answer your question, William? Or
다시 나라 니용도 민향 따위 점기 된들지.
it's also called the interdependence of mere naming and labeling. Sometimes
와 약속들이다.
actually that
타쇼들이.
that actually, when it comes to how things are dependently arisen, dependently related or dependently arisen, this is the subtlest and finest category of understanding through understanding phenomena as through being interdependent. That they
example? Can Geshe-la give an example?
Paycheck Sharma, Geshe-la, the naming tapa samgi chudi
민향 따위 점기 된들기.
nuriri.
다 우마 탕규일라 다다 쉿 탐제 민당 다점지 자샤마도 율문을 좀 되긴 윤이요 말와. 우마 탕규 된들다 쉿 간디지나 벤나 남카즈나 남카 수두도 좀 되긴 지요 말데 맞지 남카즈데 동상들라 남케 민지다 티토베들 동상들라 남카즈 자점지로 도베 자점지.
So, for example, this is the kind of interdependence that the Prasangika Madhyamakans talk about when they talk about that phenomena really only dependently exist at a level of us applying concepts, names, and labeling them that they are not that themselves at all. They possess no thatness at all, but we label them that. And for example, that which is open space, we call space or the sky. There's no skyness to it. We have labeled it and named it sky or space. But other than that, it doesn't possess any skyness at all.
토라킥 토바다 레베케베 동상들라 이 토레 깍점기 차지라 동상지를 던지지라 남카즈를 따가라.
So when we have something that is open space that is not, something that is touchable, then we just label it space. That's something that a concept that we have applied to it.
이 야부자하고라 타니 타무지도와 맞아 개와 타니 타무데 약하고 싶지 않아 뭐니잖아 개와 잡아 타니서도 두고서 숨도 엄마 가르사 상기향기 무다발리다나
개와
생인데 개와세 타니 점르마도 개와 수두도 근데 괜히 끊이어 말라 그래
개와스나
개와 맞아 아말레 부히 유레 디부히제 개와지어와 어다 타니 점지르마도 그 유릉원을 좀 되겠지 끊이어 말라고 그래
개와랑기
개와랑라 내가 아니베 가상망에 닌데 막 가서 라동 좀이지 이 개와들라 말에 자시티젠 자와셔 티젠나라 개와들라 아니베 랑용 가서 야 개와 투트딩 인두스 야니 젤 zembartubza yugen 젤ten 개와지다 아니 민다 타니 잠지마도 맨데긴 인두스 아니 젤렌 투브라데 리베케기도 아니 개와지바다 타니 잠지 타니 또베자 자 잠지마도 민두데 의미기 리베투도 자 카부도 세숭도 가산 땅요래 그래서 배 가버려. 대저 삼무망부 땅 거래. 뭐있잖아.
So actually it's quite tough to really get a true and deep understanding of what it means to be existent merely by an applied concept or a name or a label. Even birth itself, even like production, even like a child, being born from a mother is in itself something like, so birth itself, arising itself is a label. And so earlier, and so Buddha Palita had spoken about that actually for something to be arisen, even that something arises itself is simply a concept. The arising of anything is a concept. And earlier, Geshe-la had sent out a quote that I will look for that supported this. In terms of production and birth and arising as all being not existent in and of themselves, but simply something that is a result that has come from a cause. And so, Laura, I know that you had asked for an example, and so I want to make sure that you are able to follow up, and also William. As far as something that is being uncompounded, dependent arising, yet it's named and labeled. Did Geshe-la's answer, did that help you to come to an understanding of where you wanted to get, or do you have something further?
가장 아마 지금 자시티진 티지 꿀파. 네 단다 양결 꿀고.
Okay, ani di nieso.
자시티진나데 계제 랑게 칭이 두베 땡는 조발레 꼼체웨스 계좌 계좌다 계제 유견 해야 돼 랑게 생긴 좀 되긴 지랑 아주 꼼바슈 좀 보여레스 유능은 좀 되게 랑게 생긴 거는 좀 되게 된들라 꼼바슈 좀 보여레스 꼼체베스 디 까파니 민기 타니 왕게 잡아 잠래 조바 로 미데 양스 디 랑게 생긴 두바데 파게 까용두가라 다 가르리 그래 민점 타니 점지 마도 타니 레미두스 딜로 좀 가보두스 로숑 카보도 미데양 조순 닐메레스 조순 니 가르레 야네 랑게 칭이 두고 코니 계제 랑게 칭이 두고 자고야당 야니 민다 타니 점기 오네 자고야 니뭐 띵일마도 의미도스 에 mamma mitenas 랑게 칭이 두어데 리베 테기 미두스 리베 케기 두스 아니 치마 라 조보 의미데 딜로 초때 초수 장벌 자고 생도와 따뜻베 로숑 카부두데 이나 삼단에 때 로따베 민가 라점지게 거네 잡아달라 아니베 맞아 다로 삼당 우두스 이베 개쳐버려 때 랑게 칭이 두바 까용도가라 선잠바당 따지 대소강 때문에도 공두고 와라 너네 바다 깡갈로네 근데 막어제 민점 다점 다 당에 잠이 채들라 에 그상만 거저 막 그저만 부중성 어떻게서 야네 양동아 저 삼당과도 빼 미스게 쳐버려 자잔 텐델달라 타라 숨치고 와라 저 군겐장 집에 둠타 가사 텐델 누리 반조 저디가래 텐델 나라 아니 텐델 락파데 유겐 텐델들이 말하죠 유겐 텐델데 텐델 락파레 차다 차정기 텐델데 다 가르쳐 유겐 텐델을 타레 차다 차정 텐델 대 민경 따요 좀기 텐델데 다 차쇼데 다데 다디 민경 따요 좀기 텐델데 지마 지진제 하고에나 렘버 마투 세두갈라 텐델즈다 텐 세두갈라 렘버 메바델 에니페 텐 테멜라 마고제 렘버 메텐 세두갈라 지지 연데겐 당이 참우지 연데겐 텔레텐이 킨데겐
G conducted go tracks on G-chick.
다
G-chick.
텐세 지지 연 도아 텐세 지지 데 가르잖아 당이 참우들이
Lasso di ten rounds.
텐델 텐사
G-chick di sum.
다 텐델 시도 싱인도
Really.
텐데게 메타셀 거래 인규 텐메와 마임바 아니베 당이 참우지요 받던 거래 델 시디가라 체타 시디 거래 간신 델 시지데 수투도 두는데 이런 거는 두가지 여바 마임바 렘 당이 베 수투도 메 렘버마 두바 때 셰거래 티 간신 텐델 시디게 당이 찌저도 셀 두고 여시 거래 따타드 체당이가
Hey,
가부도 왔다 따타드 체다세디 또서 따타세디가라 와 아카르소레 요팔람 메버타와다 따타레 메팔레 요버타와데 체타레 아주 타니가 돼 샌들즈 비치디게 타니가 셀다 때 하고 오래
Lasso di shandak di ngoma di yang dogit sik di pena ani matrupe shepe dole dene gangshik ken le kepa.
니 케베란지 여마니 ken la rale kan tongbar che ini karte ju de la ken la rai ne kan tongbar che te chi
Tongbar
tong
che.
chi be payo ins
Really,
te chi tong chi
Diyang
be
Drelwa,
payo
ane
yo
yogere.
te su kanga de chembore aji
So,
ken la ke bate ma ke se se do kanji you ken la ni ken de ken ji na number 2 ke yo mares Ranching tuba, lembar tuba, yulungun tuba, tende ke yo mares. Kanji ken le ke ba te ma ke dera de gacha le jar gidwa. Arang chingi tuba, lembar tuba. Uma thank wala te song gacha chi ba. Rang chingi tuba, lembar tuba, sudu tuba, yulungun tuba, gacha chi ba te so. Oh, kanji ken le ke ba te ma ke de gacha le jar. Gacha lembar tuba, sudu tuba, yulungun tuba, teri ke yo mares. तो केला राले कहीं तोंबर से सिद्धगला कहाँ केला से निकेंदे गंजी ना राजिंग की टुबे तोंबर रे मादो चांगमे की तोंबा मारे लगो आता राजिंग की टुबे सुतु टुबे युलवन टुबे ओता तिंडी की तोंबर रे काजी केला के बात में तेले की राजिंग यो माइन तेले केवा राजिंग की टुबा केवा दंबर टुबा तन जवानी नियो मारला बरे केवा जबे मिंसम केवा जबा थाने समझी 제자 개와 제바 당했음도 두보즈데 상기경 숭도아 잉이치디 구르고데 상기경 려무도 빨리는 되는 여래 개와 제바 당했음도 두보스
also.
오 띠띠리다 간지 켈레 개바트만 끼띠리 케베라지 켈라 라레 칸이 똥바르셰 세데 켈라 카르 칸 라레 바데 넘버 2 똥바레스 딜라니 똥이제 티치르 똥이시베 파요인 똥이 시바이나 lembar tuba lembar zimba de ke dure lembar zimba de ke na zinzi ke ba tobki nyomo me chagri nyomo me chabaina payu chagri se sungdo ke chimbudo ate so tesun dewa chimborda kesa to do to so kiso yani no samdang wa pe misu ke chimbore
And so here, anything that we have viewed as arising, as something that has been produced, existing, arisen, actually is only that in name only, in label only, in concept only. And as it said in the scriptures, to grasp this is incredibly, incredibly difficult. And there was a quote that we had earlier that Geshe-la wants to resend because it's very, very pertinent here. I haven't been able to quickly locate it. But when I do, I will make sure to get it out on the different boards. Basically, it's speaking about production and things appearing to be arisen. But actually, as prasangikas say, they point out and they accept and leave room to understand that we have named things. We have nominal designations for things. And so there are those nominal designations. But when it's something that is a nominal designation, then mind only said, then it doesn't exist. There is no existence to it at all. So that which prasangika say are exist merely by this type of an interdependence, and there are 3 types of interdependence. This third, names and labels, prasangika say they're nominally existent. Mind only says they're not existent at all. They rule them out. And so prasangikas, so there are 3 kinds of interdependence. And before we actually went into them in detail, we had causal interdependence, that which one thing comes about in reliance upon another. For example, And then that's a very, very coarse type of interdependence that is easy to identify, to pinpoint and identify. And then interdependence number 2, that is a little bit more subtle to realize, is understanding that things are established when they come together in like a series of parts. So for example, we call something a table or a car, when all its parts are assembled, then it exists interdependently due to all of those parts coming together. And then the third, which is even more subtle to realize, is that when something is existent merely by a mind labeling it that and having a concept of it as that, as it is. And so this is very, very hard to grasp. And so there's actually no true reality to that phenomena. And it's really based only on a verbal, a nominal conceptual label that we know it as such. And so these are the 3 kinds of interdependence. And when we say dependently related, something that is dependently related, in the Tibetan word for that is ten drel. And so there is a dependent basis. And so 10 means like a basis, means there's a foundation. So there's a dependent foundation. And so actually interdependence, understanding that things are interdependently related, really keeps one from falling either to the extreme of nihilism or eternalism. And so nihilism is avoided by the 10 in Tendrel, knowing that there is a basis for this designation, a basis for this arising. And then Drel means like connection, like there's a connection. And so in this Drel, what we understand from this Drel, and this Drel keeps us, that there is a connection, an interdependent connection. This connection part of it keeps us away from permanence. It actually only exists not because it is just like that, but because it is related or dependent on something else. It is not just like that, but it will arise due to other conditions. And that keeps us away from permanence. It is not a permanent, just like that kind of thing. And so understanding interdependence keeps us from falling either to being eternalistic or nihilistic. And so when we talk about a nihilism, this is when, this is, or eternalism, this is when we subscribe or actually put existence into something that doesn't exist. This is eternalism. And then nihilism is when we deny or say that something is non-existent where something does exist. And Tendrel actually addresses both of these. The 10, where we ascribe something to where there is not, and the Drel to where we say there is not to something that actually is. So actually, this is extremely, extremely delicate, tough, hard to wrap your mind around subject matter. And so then there is this other quote that we had earlier that actually is a quote from the sutras, so the words of the Buddha, where the Buddha said, whatever is born out of conditions is unarisen. And so that first line and then the second line, for it lacks existence of a true arising nature. And so there the Buddha is saying it is not truly arisen. Whatever is born out of conditions is not really arisen, is not a real arisen phenomena. The true arising is negated here. It is contrary to true arising, whatever comes out, born out of conditions. And then all that arises relying on conditions is taught to be empty. Those who have apprehended this emptiness are conscientious. And so all that arises relying on conditions is taught to be empty. And what is it empty of? It is empty of being exactly as it is, intrinsically existent, of being that which it apparently appears to be. It is empty of having any true existent natural nature, intrinsic nature. It is empty of all of that. And those who have apprehended this emptiness are conscientious. And why is that? Well, when we say that, when we have apprehended this emptiness, what we have apprehended is that it is empty of being truly existent. And it is based on feeling things are truly existent, that all kinds of negativity and defilements and negative emotions arise. And so once we have realized that it is empty of this true existence, those negative emotions and defilements are eliminated. And when we proceed without grasping to true reality, and when we act out of, or when we then are experiencing things in a way that they are not grasped as truly existent, we have no more negative emotions. And when we have no negative emotions, we are very conscientious and virtuous. And so that's what, again, whatever is born out of conditions is unarisen, for it lacks existence of a true arising nature. All that arises relying on conditions is taught to be empty, and those who have apprehended this emptiness are conscientious. So again, Geshe-la said, this is a very pertinent quote, and a quote, these quotes from the sutras we should be reading again and again. They will really benefit us. And he will also get that quote from Buddha Palita. And again, the quote from Buddha Palita was that which is, that which we call as having taken birth or arising is simply that in name and term only.
아니 우마 지갑에네요. 땡진데와 중앙 통나 띠무 중민주르스. 대신 몇번쯤에 그냥 땀이 토마냐 버자서 지지요. 스페게 점버다. 땡들제 시디다페 타니 찌저도 쓸리나 리비갈보 지단에 동이 두지 리바 망보여래. 리베나네 땡들기 리바달라 리비 잡고스 거래. 리비 잡고 저거야 가르잖아. 따다데 체다니 찌저도 땡들집에 시디기 따다데 체다니가 쓸두고 여자 콜라 리비 잡보라래. 잡보라 왕세 차상여러 와. 가르집에 팀 가르당당 잡에 왕라여 인자 리비 잡보되게 따탄 까투 체다 까투 타니가 셀두고 인자 콜라 리비 잡보라 버다. ongi tuje riba mambo yonane riba yapuna jinde riba de lagore pe ke chembore de di guru ani tos gunsandana mare
So also, there was a quote from Aryadeva from the 400 verses that said that when dependent arising is seen, confused ignorance will not occur. Thus, every effort has been made here to explain precisely this subject, meaning interdependence. And so there are many ways to, like different forms of logic and reasoning, examination, to help us understand and come to know emptiness. But it said that interdependence is the king of reasoning. And a king has great power and has great dominion, is very, very is very vast. And so why is it that interdependence is called the king of reasoning, meaning it really has a broad domain? It's because it has great power to keep one from falling to the wrong notion of nihilism, nihilistic, denying everything, and keep one away from permanence or existentialism, ascribing to an existence in everything, a permanent existence. And so really, this is the great king of reasoning, interdependence or dependent arising. So maybe this is a good point here to take a break. Shall we take a break here?
Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Geshe-la.
Welcome.
Thank you.
주시체.
Hey, Diane, could I ask a question?
Sure. Yep.
So one of the last statements that Geshe-la made that you translated was something like, whatever is born out of conditions is not arisen, not truly existent. And so I guess I have a question about the mind. Are there parts of the mind that are not arisen, and then parts of the mind that are not born, basically?
Okay. Are
Are
there
there parts of the mind that are born and parts of the mind that are not born?
Ani Geshe-la morangi chiwadire di samsarya di dene semgi cha kashela makewa yimpa Rabe ani cha shendak semgi cha shendak kewa yimpa Rabe Kana samsarya di makewa re kewa re
수루라 우마 탕규루라
in whose, according to which, Geshe-la is asking, according to which tenet system?
Prasangika Madhyamaka.
Dene umatal gyurwe ki
셈밀라 답 차 탐제 가레나 셈 세드가라 디제 차 들어와 디제 인디가 깨와다 레데 이래데 깨와 라징이 두바 마레라 고아라 깨와 탕에 쯤지 깨르마다 깨와 라징이 두바 마레라 고아라 우마 탕규에 단 디제 디마지 가레나 깨와 라징이 두바 땐 싸와닌 드고 마레 깨와 탕에 쯤 미강 다점
So the Prasangika Madhyamakas would say that the mind is simply named, it's labeled, it is unarisen, it is, and actually whether we're calling it a conditioned phenomena or an unconditioned phenomena, that's not, that doesn't come into play here, although they call it conditioned phenomena. Prasangikas say that the mind is unarisen because it is named and it is merely a concept, a labeled concept.
자산상기게 개와져봐 탕에점도 주고 쓰기도 탕에도 개와래 렘버트도 개요 말이지
So-
탕에도 개와다 덴도 개와 가자기도
Is there anything that we talk about with our usual minds that we can, how is it even possible that we can access what's not, what's outside of what we label?
Such as?
What we call mind is just a label. So what is there? What exists?
Okay. And so before I ask that question, I will just translate what Geshe-la just said. It is conventionally arisen. It is arisen by way of convention, but mind is not truly existent. Ani morangi triwa shandatire den drupi ani yerpa den drup yempa kangyen.
덴도 여봐 덴버트가 둘쯤이야 요 말에 쟤요 말에 맞아 덴버트가 난거 얼마도 이 나와도 친지로로 와 똑바 친지로 차대요 덴버트가 둘쯤이야 말에 덴버트가 이어서나 나와도 덴버 차로 와 덴버트가 요 말에 엄마 당겨올라
So again, coming from the perspective of Buddhist philosophy, from the Prasangikas, the Prasangika Madhyamaka, there is not a atom's worth, there is not a particle's worth of true existence anywhere to anything at all. It appears as if there is, but there is not an atom's worth of true existence to anything that appears. And so Geshe-la answered your question with nothing. There is nothing, according to Prasangika, that possesses a particle's worth of true existence.
다
Can I ask a question?
되게 자식 디젠티 양양들로다 삼당나 랑 생긴 거는 겨와지나 다 겨와된 두 차송으로 와 겨와된 넘버 2 바데 동이 톱지 리바데 까기도 와 동이 톱지 넘버 톱지 리바 망보여다 무지개고 다시 요매경 거들 겨와가에 리바 망보여래 그래서 그 까기 와래 랑 생긴 두비 겨와데 다 자고도 가르자고라 민형 자 따여 좀 이텐데 민점지 또배 파샤 점지 된지 마다 탕이 점지 마다 다 기니 리고 말때 탕이 담어데 단당 가서 귤라 된진 슈 충보여 인상 이 탕이 담어데 자 카보도 제승도 아지르 뭐지기 이나양 섬텐데 땅기 때 쳐서 로땅구도 마다 점바 도사 민도 숭도아
Lo
로테 쳐서 땅버 자고 제승도 자시디 젠나라
Ola so di sikjim ngala metanda konda.
요래
Yena yang ngala ani dirbe di ani rangshin yume ani selwa yingi yume tsam cholwa minpe dirbe di shandak yingirela. Ngala tanda megen kenla konda.
네
Yeah, ani shandak chik ani dene satri
자시디 젠
sachi chichen gi sik chik dene pelcher di ani shandak chikre rangshin yume solwa yingi yume ani sam solwa minpe ani chene manyeba
젠네 많이 봐 밀어서 번 가봐 미노스
ani chene manyeba na ani rangshin yupa keki ani
밀어
meklaso
번 가봐 미노스 또 따다 레겨 대존 잡으래
Lasso, shandak kerang la ani chikpa yempangala me konda tanda. Selne nye masong la.
알레
So in this quote from Jetsun Kappa, in this quote from Jetsun Kappa, it speaks about anything having self-characteristic, any true foundation of self-characteristics to base true establishment on, and that things are simply mental constructs, merely made up by mind. And actually, if we look into whether these self-characteristics actually exist, we will never arrive there. We'll never find them. But actually, we strongly exist to the things, to these constructs, these societal constructs, these personal constructs, these conventionally labeled things. Oh, so we strongly grasp at them, and so it's very, very hard to break. This is, something that is a very, very hard habit to break. Ani ngoma ani geshe-la morang gi triwadi peche shana ani pena dering sanima roa ani ngaso sanima mintak diyang mintak patsambre. Tanda sanima re yanayang ani sharchokla re diyang pechek re yanayang ani dering la sanima gi ngowo ani la ani ani salne nye yomar marwa. So for another example of what is something that is a name and a label and a construct, but something that we're all very kind of fixed and habituated to is, we call today Sunday. So today is Sunday, but in this day, where is the Sundayness? Can you find any Sundayness in this day? No matter where you look, you're not going to find any Sundayness, any essence of there being a Sunday. It's a word we made up, it's a concept we made up, and we've labeled it that, and we all kind of abide by that. But when we say that there's no Sunday truly established, it's just that. That's what we're getting at.
So can I ask a question?
Sure. And so again, just like that, understanding this third type of interdependence, the nominal labeling, nominal concepts and labeling, is very,
Testing,
very
1, 2.
important. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Sorry about that. Now I'm really messing up.
No, you're good.
I didn't think you heard me. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear
I don't
you.
want to interrupt. Can I ask a question?
Yes.
But I can wait till you're finished, Diane.
Nope, that was the last thing I have finished. Okay, wait one moment. Geshe-la just sent me something. He's asking me if I found it. So, yes, Rasong Geshe-la. Lepsong.
Kecha rang tsingi tube tingni joba kom chewe maranzo den shu chombuyo zambar tube denzing ngazo gilu shu chombuyo wa rang tsingi tube zimbade shu chombuyo wa te kom chewe ti kapana da kecha rang tsingi tuba ka yondu gala mingi tanye ongi jaba samla ti teta jopa lola mideyang sigdoa rang chingi dropa kane ta minha tayo zamji min zamji te pe lola charya khabu sigwa ta mideyang josun ni melas josun tangbo kare rang chingi dropa keje rang chingi dropa oh tire ni melas ngama mite cha ngama kare keje rang chingi dropa de keje rang chingi tubade tegimi dos deme tubje ribate zuka kayo dos singore chima umetes chima karze minhyang tayo som jikebade umindu temmadon dosa mindu sungota 타이니 좀 지켜야마도 정말 도서 민두 쓴 거래. 딜로이 초 로또 초스 트럼버 차오스기도. 당가론 배 자다 가본도데 단다. 이나 삼로데 답에 민현 따위 좀 있던데 가라. 삼로 땅고도 세순 거다. 이때 그런저 양양도 삼로 땅 거야 돼. 이게 전부다.
And so, yes, we will get to your question. Geshe-la just wanted me to briefly go over a quote that he just sent that is very relevant and pertinent here. As for that which produces and that which is produced, or that which is arising, having any established existent self-characteristics whatsoever, we have become just habituated to, we're so used to taking things in a very solid way, like they have these self-characteristics, and that's the important word, self-characteristics, that they are really just that, possessing anything of what they appear to be, or that we have understood them or labeled them or just gone along with the societal norm of understanding them to be. But that we, in order to counteract that, we examine them in a way that there's nothing to them but a word. There's nothing to them but a term. It's nomenclature only. And due to the power of that nomenclature that we have all been encultured into, it is very hard for us to unwind this, for our mind to unlearn it, to unwind that back. And so actually there are two ways that we can do this to unprocess these learned, conditioned understanding of this phenomena. Okay, ngamala mite ani ngamala mite
Ngama mithe ngama de
ngama.
rang thingi to be kiawa.
Okay.
Number to be kiawa. Yurmun to be kiawa. Take it, take me those.
And the first
The metuji ribati kayung to
And the first one is to go back and examine using the logic that one has applied, one has, even if it's kind of subliminal and unconsciously, one subscribes self-characteristics and true existence to things they hear, see, know, experience. And when you really examine that, you find it's very, very unreasonable to even think that. Why do we even think that? When we examine it further, it's completely unreasonable. And then secondly, okay. And then the second way of examining it is that we call things something, and just really examining that labeling. Look at the labeling that we're doing. And when we look closer at that labeling, we also see that those things don't possess that which we have labeled upon them. And that's also unreasonable and illogical. And that this is something that will actually take a little while for the mind to get rehabituated and refamiliarize oneself with. So one is going to have to keep like reconditioning to this new way of seeing through those two things.
Kewa number to a kai on the gala, Kewa tangy some Kewa Mado, tak Gunimidus who soon gore. The illegal take Yathendela, a Kangathan Jendawaj and Gapa Meva came up, but Chava Mavataba, or Memondome, but Tata to maintain means that the Page Sawa Sherabgi Dewayorwa, or Sherab
Lasso.
Kangathan Jendawajum. That Igala Kewa say, Tiny some Jimado Mindus or Sungdo. 상기 경기 깨와져봐 탕에서도 두보
Yeah.
탕 삼기 두보
So, yeah.
이 군제도 순고 답변 내가 전부를 안아서 린지슈 정보 얘기가라 이 왕기다 유능원이 이지 마케나 계단전다 민두 섬거로 마다 가서 죽어 말해 죽을 때 민두대 이날 삼루대 줘서 땅고도 때 저마다나 리빈의 용구도 순고하다 이런 거지.
Uh-huh. And so, you know, in that in that instance of re-examining something that has arisen, so when you find yourself stuck in a place where things are seeming very solid and real, look again at what has arisen before you and how has it arisen? And that's the way to get unstuck. And so we go back to another quote that we had earlier from Jetsun Kappa, where he said, because we are so strongly habituated to doing so, we hold the notion of objects coming into establishment based upon their own identifying self-characteristics. This is opposed by positing that phenomena are under the subjection of being merely nominally labeled, an assertion that is hard to fit in one's understanding. Regarding these two manners with reflection, one will see that the former phenomena are results produced by their own self-characteristics is logically not feasible. And through intellectual understanding, one concludes definitively on the latter, that things are existent by way of nominal designation. And so this was said by Jetsun Kappa. I think that this quote is up on both boards, and it's really a good quote to go to when you're finding yourself just falling back into that stuckness of seeing things as real existent things. And now, Stephen, I think you had a question on each.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Geshe-la spoke earlier to answer a question and talked about dependently existent, or we talked about the three kinds of interdependence, and that everything that we label conventionally is dependently existent. What would an example be of something that is true, a true arising? That word was used, true arising. Would an example of that be? Something that is truly arisen?
If it were truly arisen, right? If there were such a thing?
Yeah, perhaps that would be a question that, yes, is there such a thing as something truly arisen? Does that exist? Yeah. And then if so, what would an example be?
Okay, and I think Laura's question got a little bit into that too. It was very related. So let's see. Ani dine tendrel ne kewa ani gyudang kyan dang chak ten di ming takpatam ne ani kewa yore tendrel ne kewa yore yenayan ani di sungpayempa di dendrup yomare.
Oh,
di dendrup yomare.
Zembartuba yomare. Zembartuba kewa chen yomare.
Dine dendrup ani dine dendrup ki chir ani yona ani kandrere. Dendrup yona kandrere.
Zembartuba yona Zembartuba yo inarwa.
Re.
Tape karsore. Zembartuba te ribbon gacha macha bare. Zembartuba te ribbon gare. Ribbon gacha maybe cable. Lamke gacha le me nika yore.
Rikpa
Ribbon gacha maybe cable. Ribbon gacha ina me gu. Riba yanta rewa. 리바 양다 근가자 인 신젤라 코로 친지로지데 차디오레 디니 렘버투바 요이나 레메 테그마르와 코니 나오요디 문바셀구도 문바요디 나와셀구도 코니 너제너제 차디오르와 덴두타 렘버투 덴두타 레메 투지 기르바니 너제너제 차디오르와
Ani kongi chiwa nipa dire dendrup ki chik ani yona
Yomare.
dendrup ki
덴두지 쉐요나 동이 되게 말해 동이 투지 기르바다서 리바 양다 많이 버차 그래
Okay, and so I'm going to do your second, the second question first. No, there are no truly arisen phenomena, no truly existent arisen phenomena. Because actually, if there were any truly arisen existing phenomena, then emptiness would not be true. Then emptiness would be a fallacy. And so when we're investigating, so what would a truly existent phenomena look like if it did exist, which was your first question? If something were truly existent, then there would be no logic that contradicted it. And Dene rikpa gakcha anime ba
리피
di.
가자이네 메구그레스
Okay, di sirpo ani nipa.
람기
Then
가자래 요메니가요래
la.
람기 가자 람 페나
Oh, lamgi gakcha.
뇽몬도서 람기 가자로와 뇽몬다 람기 가자라 렌두바 자초그레 뇽몬 자초 뇽몬도서 여로와
Oh, lasso.
요네 빵구라 메니 가르방
So then also, for example, there wouldn't be
람덴 여로 람덴
the truth, yeah, like the truth of the path, like things that would be brought to a cessation because they would be truly existent. So if things, for example,
요메니가요레스 람기 가자라 요바요레 메바요레스 요바다 가르스 뇽몬 초데 메바데 덴버 메바 아타카 동이 람차더라 동바니 또빌로데 람차더라 띵가자들라 덴버투바 까거와 인 개발도 같아서 대수시원 대수양 하고는 랍침보 하고 그러다
Dine lamgi gakcha la
요메니가요
year me
니가 리빙 가자에는 메구레스 메비 캡라고 왔다 캡디 캡 메구레라고 왔다
Okay, gonda get that's go to songeshla. Dine nyomong sana di gakchare.
가자리 람그 가자리
Lamgi gakchare. Dine tongni tobani
로데 람러와 동이 또 로데 람러와 람레 마레
re.
동이 또 로데 람러와
Re.
동이 또 루 카르카고레 딘진 카고르와 제장 딘진 동이 또 루기 딘진 카용데가 메켄제도 동이 또 루 가자레 메켄지도
Karigi making chick.
동이 또 루 가자라
Lo.
오 딜람 차디오라 딩가지갈 메켄지 요레 요켄지 요레 동이 또 루기 뇽문 카고레 뇽문도 요레 테 티카고르와 팅올레 키고 마르와
Okay.
두아
I'm confused, Gishla.
마레 동이 또 로데 람레 마레
Re, lam re.
오 동이 또 로디기 딘진 까기도 와 녀몽 가기도 와.
Mhm.
그 가짜들 니도 와다 람 요겐지다 매겐지 니도 와.
Oh.
이추에나라 매겐지도 와.
Mhm.
도 와.
Mhm.
이추에 요겐지도 녀몽도 와. 녀몽 아주 길을 열어 와. 동이도 그때 가게 올까 두고 와.
Rere.
방 두고 와. 까다 방마다 돈다 집어지래다.
Lasso. Okay, disturbodo yanayang di ngone den drup ani yerpegi chir yempa mepa dang dralwa.
말에 렌두 렘버투바 zultame yo marwata.
Rere.
내인사 람기든 가자 메바데 렌두 자고라.
Okay. Okay.
요바달라 녀몽자는 디기도 와.
Mhm.
렌진 녀몽 되기대.
Mhm.
람긴 가자레스.
Lasso.
람긴 가자레 여민이가 예스. 리빈 가자레 메비캅스. 자잔 렌진데서 렌진데서 때 렘버투바데 리빈 가자레스.
Mhm.
메고르스 거래. 다데
Mhm. Um, so also there is within the practice of the truth of the path, if things were truly existent, then we wouldn't be able to eliminate them through the logic and the reasoning and the practice of the path. So for example, there are in the process of the practice of the path, there are things that are to be eliminated, and such as the afflictive emotions, and which are the afflictive emotions. And then there are things, and so if the afflictive emotions were truly existent, then we wouldn't come to the point of eliminating afflictive emotions. And then there on the positive, which is to realize emptiness. Actually, emptiness is realized through the negation, through understanding the lack of existence of any truth, right? Emptiness is understood through understanding that there is no true existence, no truly existent. That is what the realization of emptiness is.
Okay. Okay, so I think I understand what Geshe is saying. So can I like further this? Okay. So my question was truly arising, and then Geshe answered with truly existent. Okay, so by truly existent, then we have discussed that things don't appear, things are not as they appear. Correct? Is that correct? They're conditional. So, and it is that attachment to the way we believe things truly appear that gets us in trouble, because our concept is flawed, and so we attach personal thoughts to things that aren't true, and then that brings us unhappiness, right? Because things don't turn out the way we think they are. So then if you get rid of all of if you, all conditioned things, if you accept that everything that you see is conditioned, it's not truly as we see it, does that mean that it doesn't exist? Okay, so here's my first question is, does the thing that we see, that we misinterpret because of our attachments, does it exist in any form at all? I mean, is it mind? I mean, it kind of goes back to mind only. Do things in the Madhyamika Prasanjika tenet system, are there truly, do things is there any, do things, I don't want to use the word truly exist because that might, but do things exist, but just not, if we can see them with a form of emptiness and not attached to anything, but do things still exist? Is there still, like my body, does my body exist? If we're, as an example. So, and so I guess then to make this simple, then things do exist. There is existence of objects, perhaps, but we just don't see them correctly because of our attachments. But things do exist. Would a Prasanjika say that?
Like that there is something there, we're just seeing it wrong. Like there's something there.
Yes.
Something there. Maybe some
Yes.
matter or something.
Like well, for myself, because I'm attached to my body, right? I mean, that's all I have, right? So ultimately it's it's where my mind exists inside this body, inside my body, right? This. So does my body exist? I mean, so things do, things, I'm going to be careful when I say truly, but things do exist, but they just don't exist the way we see them. Or is Geshe-la saying that nothing exists, which I wouldn't understand how that could be.
Ani, Dene? Di ni parla pena chu karayanayang kangyang drup yomare. Di chikche yang mena ani ngato nangwa nangshin chu tup nangshin drup menayang ani chik yore dulsam ani yore pena nye ludila ani kangyang yomare ani
labgo marta tangi to yogo chugo kesa phage karsa tamjun jimegi sungjing time ba o te chona yore tangi to yogo chugo uma tangi lula tangi to kyawa yore tangi to ngai lu yore tangi to ngai sem yore tangi to chetamje yore zemartuba chen yomar dulsama yomare
ina tendral sumgi gone ani gyudang kenge tendral dang
kare ina be chetamje da tangi to kanga yore da tangi to yogo chugure zembar me mego chugo mare.
So it's not being said that nothing exists at all, that there like nothing exists, be it your body or whatever phenomena it is, that is not what's being said. But what is being said here with the Prasangika is that it is not truly existent. And when we say truly existent, we go back to, it's really important to understand what we mean by truly existent. And there was this great master from Amdo, Jigme Damche, who really looked at, so what does this word like existent or truly established mean? It means to exist in as true in nature, absolutely, authentically, by its very nature, intrinsically, of holding defining self-characteristics, of holding true disposition, of being of the ultimate mode of abiding and unreliant upon designation, something that is not codependent, something that is self-instituting, something that is a reality in and of itself, and of having self-established nature or established self-nature. That's what it is lacking. Is it conventionally, again, those three interdependence being interdependent of an interdependent phenomena, relying on other causes and conditions, relying on parts? Yes, existent in that way, or being that way, but not having true intrinsic self-nature. So Geshe-la said it's not being said that nothing exists at all. That's not what's being said.
Okay, thank you.
lagu marda
Another question?
jime
Thank
tabju
you.
isungdo mingde par japa tamle rangi ngweni dulu su tuba tu madula mata machepe shepa am yulki ngweni yemela lokha machope shepa rangawe parta patamdu tuba tangi tu tube che in las mingzam jidwa racham totacham vejacham nangcham tayu tu tubanam tondachi bare es mingi yobacham ve yobacham zanate tondachi bare ti yone yogo chogurele gore thinking jibudwa.
So Geshe-la just read in Tibetan the quote or this verse that I just read in English as well. So, you know, it's all saying the same thing. This is what's being negated in phenomena, that things exist in those particular ways, being absolute and true and authentic and real and having true nature and so forth. He just read that, you know, really, really beautiful. It just gives us a way to, you know, to examine phenomena and see how they really exist on you know, on a level of us subscribing to something that's, you know, not really there.
Tatiri tangi tu yone yogo che lembar mena meko miche la kota lembar me batangi me be kochugu mares rwa lembar mi yomete kar me ba yote mete semi yulimin la ta orwa lo semachi ki yulimin lembar matu zangi semi ta me barezel la tu mares lamna digo mares ahota tangi도 여바점 이 요거 저그레스 tangi도 요나 tangi도 세미 율링구로 다 tangi도 두전들라 기주 숨창고 와라 제든라 따파 tangi도 세미 율링바 텔로 돈담지기 르 세미 미노바즈데 기주 숨창고 와라 tangi도 두제다 다티 디마시나 테니 양 tangi도 두제데 양코 디차고라 tangi도 두제들랑 아주 베 samlomangputang wade peke chimbore.
And so there is this saying that existent, yes, existent by means of designation, of convention, of designation. And when we say not existent in that way, and all those ways that we just mentioned, it doesn't mean not existent. It's not the same. Not existent in that way is not the same as saying completely non-existent. And so it's really, really important that we have those two straight in our mind. Not existent in that way doesn't mean not existent, and existent by means of conventionality doesn't mean existent. And so, you know, this is you applying valid cognition, the logic of valid cognition or pramana, you know, a very particular, like a science of logic in Buddhism that examines phenomena. And when we say conventionally existent phenomena, it needs to fit into three categories. So, or three statements would be true about that particular phenomena. And these three are, it is known to a conventional consciousness. No other conventional cognition within that convention contradicts it from being thus known. And reason that accurately analyzes reality, that is, analyzes whether something intrinsically exists or not, does not contradict it or does not invalidate it. And so those three things must be true about something if it is in the category of being a conventional phenomena.
와다 라동 처음에나 당이들도 세들라 기주 숨탕구도.
And so there are these three these three facets that need to be there if a phenomena, to include that as a conventional phenomena. And that was a statement, I think, by Jetsun Kappa on the great treatise on superior insight.
Can I ask?
Laura?
Yeah. So tell Geshe-la, I'm sorry, I know I've tried to ask this before and I just can't quite get it. But what we call and what I haven't, what I don't really realize yet, Buddha nature, pure awareness, clear light mind, we have all these words, I think, that are pointing to it. But is that truly existent?
Ani dene Daishin Yingpo dang samdi o salwa di dendrup ani yana.
때 말에 최담제 덤bar 마두스 디가라 디진 셰바 대신 임보전한다 감 대신 임보전한다 아니 딱 리전한다 심기 칭이전한다 다 대속한가 타니 짬지래 Number 2 चे अमर number 2 है ना गिरो में बचा दूँगा
La
number 2 है ना गिरो में किन जिचा दूँगा मतलब ते तंदे कम देशे निम्बो मोचा ठने गिरो तंगी सांगी सान रोगा
So no matter what we call it Buddha nature, call it pure awareness, call it awareness wisdom, it is not truly established. It is not a truly existent, truly established phenomena. For things that have true existence are unchanging. They are just what they are, and they will not change. They are like a permanent, unchanging, existent phenomena that will not go through any changes. And so when it comes to realizing like a Buddha nature, or traversing through the stages that allow us to further and evolve in a way to become enlightened, we wouldn't be able to become enlightened because there would be no change. And so those things are not true and fixed and existent. So Buddha nature is not truly existent.
당 아랑즈기 셰바 타모들 답에 상기산 로야게 일바이데 셰바 타모 들어와 Buddha nature.
And so it's this subtle stream of consciousness, this subtle stream of mind, actually, that undergoes this process that becomes enlightened, or you could call also this subtle continuum of mind Buddha nature. And it is this that undergoes this process and becomes enlightened.
sheba tamo de sheba indugala sheba dembar tubaji yo marwa.
And so if mind consciousness were permanent, or if it were existent, if it were actually existent, like truly existent, then it would be like exactly that. It would be an unchanging thing. It wouldn't be anything else. And so our mind, this subtle mind, is not truly existent, and therefore it can evolve into awakening.
So the mind stream is what gets enlightened.
Dine sem tramo di pena di sang ani sang gepe gidze di kare sang gepare di sem tramo di
tas tanda ngozi gula lubru timitum di orwa lubru victima sel sona taran sangi chasare
dine sem
semgiranji osawal timanane lubru wasgidoga semgiranji tepe
So pure awareness changes.
tamame bani nyomonju manyo jire lagore semgiranji la nyomonju nyo mare lagore
semgi
ranjin la nature la nyomong yo mare la pe semgiranji osal wasigdoa osal sidiga petaga nyomong gunu gwe manyo wa nyomong ranjin yo mare lagore
dine sem rangi dela gyor yomare
ranjin sidigala nature wa semgi mind nature
re
nyomong yo mare lagore
laso dine semgi rangjin di gyor yomare
Jurwata yorwa. Jurwata ngatanda ngatu susike yugi semgi ranjinde sangi sapardun rogorwa. Jurwatangin rogorwa.
laso dine semgi rangjin ani sungna ani dine semgi tramo
Semgi tamozena semgi ranjin zana chikpareta.
pare
O tela nyomong ju nyu yo marela bare te gul ti tela nyomong gi nyomong ju nyu yo marela bare semgi ranjila nyomong te luburu sudu ene pe chilone ma tumsha ge luburu sudu yo rela re derunchen dimana ne luburwa jata dimada selba ina ta sangge bare dimama selba du semjin chabare yulamena dedoa mata tapata shindu namta kurumjin sigdoa dima chunze ge mata be kabla semjen dima chunze ta be kabla chanchu seba dima yongsu zo be kabla sangge zede
yankirchik dine
dima gun mata be kabla mata tapata shindu namta kurumjin dima gun mata be dima luburu dima mata be kabla semjen
laso dine chik semchen chik ani
Jangju
jangju
seba.
sempa yankirchik di poketone
mata tapatang shindu namta kurumjin
laso
gini mata be kabla chanchu semjen dima chunze ta be kabla chanchu seba roa ani dima yongzo zo ba ta yong dugala ani sangge mata ta pa shindu namta kurim jins to ko dima ze damaze chani ko toba lam toba yome ga chani ming mata ji ta par mata sem thamoto tanda dini yongin sem thamoto sangge sapor don rugo wara
So the mind stream, and when we say the nature of mind, mind's nature, or the subtle stream of mind, those both mean the same thing, or those are synonymous. It is clear and luminous. It's radiant and luminous. And one possesses this luminous natural state of the mind, this natural state of consciousness that is in itself untainted. However, with the defilements of the afflictions, it is obscured. The afflictions themselves don't taint the actual mind's nature, but they obscure it. They are adventitious, they are fleeting, they like cover and veil it, but they never taint mind's pure, clear light nature itself. When these defilements are removed or purified, then one attains enlightenment, one becomes awakened, one is enlightened, they are removed, one is enlightened. And in the text, which is called the Sublime Continuum, it is said that there is defiled, purified, and completely purified. And this is the difference between sentient beings and Buddhas. When the mind is impure or has defilements, this is called a sentient being. When there is purification, but still some small, even a small defilement, this is the level of a bodhisattva. And to be completely purified is the level of a Buddha. And so I asked Geshe-la, then, are you saying, this was my question, are you saying then that, so does the mind itself change or not change? So this continuum of mind, or what's called mind's nature, is this something that undergoes transformation or it doesn't? And he said, yes, it does change. There is change. There is change within the mind. This is how it is purified, and this is how we become, we attain Buddhahood, how we become Buddhas.
So the mind stream is in its pure state, always enlightened, is what I'm hearing, right?
I will, that's what I'm hearing, but I will ask that. And I think Laura had maybe a follow-up question. Dine semgi rangjin ani dakpa yimpe kapla dine di
Tapa yimbe kap yo mare. Semgi ranjin tapa ginu mare. Semgi ranjin ta tapa mare chi.
Olaso dine
Ita pare.
no dak ani pana ani nyomong ani sel.
Oh.
Not talk about dak.
Oh,
Ani dine
Timata pa.
trima dak.
Timata sonata sangire. Timo zopata be kapla sangi. Timata be ta mata ke chanita simjin sangi chanju seba nyindurangel jagorwa.
Trima mepe gi sem de la du sange.
Oh, sangi.
Yes, the mind.
Sangi.
The mind, the pure mind without defilements having purified, is Buddha, is Buddhahood.
Dum desho jana shitip selna sangi nyundip selna nyunthi rangel yan chanju seba. Shitip the nyundu nyega muscle be kabla simjin.
Question.
Odu lamna ta tosu semla papuche yungura.
Dine shidrip
tape kamla sangi.
ani nyundrip takpe kapsu.
Nyundip te kala ta nyunthi yungure rangel yungure chanju seba yungura.
I do have another question, Diane, when it's time.
Nika mata be kabla ta ngato zoli jiro chanju seba ngato zoli ji karsa kore.
So if we can look at three levels of so yes, when the mind is without any defilement, this is Buddhahood, this is enlightenment, this is the completely awakened state. However, there are three levels. One can be defiled, that's a sentient being. One can have purified the emotional obscurations, and that is the level of being a Shravaka Pratikya Buddha, or hearer, solitary realizer, or Bodhisattva. So that's with the afflictive emotion obscurations being removed. When one has removed the very subtle cognitive obscurations to wisdom as well, then this is Buddhahood. So there are these three levels. And I think what we, ani geshe-la pelcher kongi triwa yang dila ani yore. Dene semgi rang shin nyomong dang trima kangyang mepe kapsu sangye yempa ani yana. Dene semgi rang shin dela ngone gyorio mare. Trima dene loborgi trima gyoria yore. Yene semgi rang shin rangla gyoria yogimare.
Semgiranjin la gura yogi mare sana te semgiranjin shepare mare. Shepa ina mida bingura.
I gotta ask one more question.
Okay, Laura.
No, you go first. And then,
No. I think it's connected to what you were asking
Right.
before.
So if I clear all the obscurations away and I achieve Buddhahood, and let's say Diane does too, do we have the same mind?
Mhm.
Are we at the same?
Like the same realization?
This what would be different about our minds? How would they be different, or would they be exactly the same?
Pena ani mi ni sangyena pena ani nyomong dang shedrep ani chatang salne sangyena mi digi parla ani semgi parla keba kariore.
Mi ni sangena
Pena lor dang mi shandak ani sangena ko nigi semgi parla kebar yana.
팔처리 얘기 말해. 가르잖아. 거기 상기 산다 배 상기 산나 강가 다 수수 렌데 왕게 궁행을 강루지고라 상게 거라. 거기 때때 이시 주구 오지바를 차르고 와래. 이렇게 봐 자고 말해.
So although two different people, due to different, like their different karmas and so forth, may arrive at the process of developing into that Buddhahood in a different way due to their different karmas, once they're both enlightened and have reached the state of Buddhahood, this Dharmakaya wisdom aspect, this, it's the same. So their mind would be the same. This primordial wisdom Dharmakaya aspect that has now been realized.
How is that not truly existent then?
Dindreyana kandres pena yeshe chuku dendrup ane.
Then 누구 말와? Then 또 라구 말와.
Dene kandres ani morangi sampala dene ani kandres dendrupio mare karechene.
Zembar
Yeshe.
Zembar tu ba yona ko karechina zembar tu sona zemet tu chigiripe te ka mathu chagro. Ani zemet tu chigiripa de ripa yanta main bacha dora. Ko yun sembo imba samgi zembar tu ba lago mara zembar tu ba sidegala phage yul ngone chutu tu ngenji gugu wara.
So actually, it's not truly existent. It's not that, Geshe-la said, it's not that it's being said that there is no stable continuum that is, again, like you said, the same, like the mind energy aspect of in its purified form is the same. Not saying that that's not the same and not like a stable thing to recognize, like that it's like one, in its aspect, although it is being experienced by two different people, that it's not exactly the same. It's not the same thing as saying something is truly existent, because when something is truly existent, it's truly existent exactly as it appears. Then it would be exactly like as it is appears to be, like in a self-perpetuating, exactly like that solid kind of thing. It also wouldn't rely.
I guess I'm just gonna have
That's
to
fine.
wait and experience it someday and see what that is.
It also wouldn't have relied on any other conditions to bring it about.
Okay.
Nothing's truly existent.
That's what Geshe-la said.
Yeah.
So real simple, right?
elaborate
You don't think about it a lot, it's easy, but if you really examine it, it's not so easy.
And then, so it's another thing is that gets confusing is because with our language and the way we interpret things, truly existence might be interpreted. I think that's what Laura's saying, as, a chemical reaction, which isn't truly existent either, or, the wind blowing, which isn't truly existent either.
Well, it's like somehow I've got this idea that Buddha nature is the basis of everything, and therefore it's truly existent and it's not changing. But I don't, so
Dene deshin nyingpo di seri di morangi hakoyala. Dene magyoria chick yores.
gyurtan gyurgo ngajin gyurwa najin nangyo marwa gyurtan gyurgo ko 타조 라조 차라 망고 두고 와라 고랑 대신 뭐 왕보다 태연도 걸로 고락 바차고 와래 왕보다 마찬가 고 타로 지 누구 와래
왕보 마차 아니
왕보다 마차도 걸라
음
차라도 고 유한도 누구 와라 골라 차라 차와다 락 바차고 차고도 와 유러면은 차와다 락 바차고 차고야 민도 와
드네 대신 닝폴라 차락 양요레
대신 뭐잖아 시바 대신 뭐라 타라스나다 또스 만디 근소리지데
대신 닝포델라 교리야 요레
대신 뭐 딴 유르네니 감 대신 닝보도 상기 차그러와 이시 추구 차그러와
레레
그러면은 감 대신 닝보도 추구 차긴 매긴 차로라
대신 닝포 데 닐라 아니 교리나 야마나 델라 아니 셰파
다 샘타모세다 대신 닝보세다 돈다데 찍바래 샘타모데 왕보다 태연도 걸고 락바차고 와래 다 대신 닝보를 타라잖아 양 당연히 캔서 차고도 와
드네 왕포당 트레나
왕보다 태나
Pena?
배는 나랑서 심진기기 단다 거는 가서 기기 샘타모데 락파 차대로 왕보 등인도 왕보 내가 제 나진지 완전 주도 같이 두고 와라 니 그걸 갑자 또서 왕빌레가 맞아 인자 코타로 두고 와라
Yinayang, okay, lasso.
다 대체 님보서나 양 또서 당연히 무슨 양 가가 차그로 마도 또다 샘타모서나 대체 님보서나 지바라 인규 당연히 또서 누구도
Yeah. So, for example, looking at this Buddha nature, does Buddha nature change? Is it something truly existent? Remembering that something that's truly
유메 샘잖아 대체 님보잖아 아 샘타모잖아 어설잖아 돈다 지바라
again, whether we call it the original mind, the natural state, the subtle mind, nature of mind, it's all the same, Buddha nature. So posing that question, so, you know, I said, could Geshe-la say more about Buddha nature or this nature of mind? Does it change? Doesn't it change? I offered that, you know, you had understood that this is something that is, you know, the one, like, you know, that one true thing that is always there, that is kind of unchanging. And Geshe-la said that
대신님도 주구 차거를 자그 말을 대신님보다 주구 차거를 자그 말을
Ani Morangla.
어
So is Buddha nature the same as Geshe-la is asking you? And so I haven't.
방향도 갈라 주구 차건데 대신님보를 왜 연다지래
So is Buddha nature, so when someone realizes Buddha nature, is it the same thing as Dharmakaya or is it different? And Geshe-la is asking you.
Same.
Chikpare.
주구 차거도 와 주구 차나 대신님보다 주구 차서 그러소
So actually it's from Lasso Geshe-la dene Dejing Nyingpo.
주구 차서 되는 유로 차서
Ngoma kerangi ani kandre nangwa karela
대신님보다 주구 차기였나 유로 차서 돼
di hako songina morangla ani tuwa karere.
주와데 들어와 대신님보다 유로야 말하려고 걸어와 유로야 맨나 대신님보다 주구 차거를 자그 말해서
So I guess I wanted to make sure I'm phrasing my question right. Does Buddha nature turn into Dharmakaya? Does our Buddha nature become Dharmakaya?
Well, I thought they were synonymous, but
Morangi sampala ani gyoru ani pana dejin nyingpo chukula gyore yomare koni di chikpachikyangre ming
지바치기나 말해 따때 니마 케바 가지기 때 숨고하래 똑바때 기거래
olaso.
심진규라 주구랑 지수여 시야데 대생님보 거랑을 쓰고하래
actually,
다 케바 망보지게 띠 되는 말에스 대생님보 아니베 대생님보데 감대월세비 님보데 야 상계 산다는 주구제데 띵이지니 셈베사족이 주구 니바판이 차고 마도마 마판가는 차고 말을라 그래
So there are debates back and forth.
시들려 다데 도바데 레브거 ndabandabore
So there are, this is debated and spoken about in the scriptures, and what's said is that actually there's a difference between Buddha nature and Dharmakaya. Buddha nature is the potential that sentient beings possess that can go through the process of purification and then reach the Dharmakaya state. And so in that case, then there would be a transformation. And so that's another proof of how and why.
There's a transformation of coarse mind, right, into
Well,
Buddha. Yeah.
let me finish translating what Geshe-la had said before, explaining another proof of why it is not truly existent, is that this mind, this subtle mind, actually, it can be coarse or subtle. So when the sense faculties are involved and engaged, then this mind is in its coarse state. When we sleep, then this mind kind of recedes and goes into its subtle state when the faculties aren't engaged, is something he also said.
Then you're that Tobaza, you're that round ransom Tonsal Chuku like Capsuches. Then he came to Jane.
Rangs,
Ransom Tonsal Chuku like Capsuche. The Nigala, so sem rang sem that dashing Budra. The Chuguran long in Dua. Ransom Tonsal Chuku like Capsuche. But then they might Daga Ishin Dun and Didua. Semni Ishin Juegu, Sangi do Matsulji Zigua. Semni Ishin Juegu, Ishis that Sangi Sata can be Ishi Chugu Ishis Gora. Semni Ishin Juegu, Sangi do Matsulji Suda. Daga Ishin Dunala. That is what money. Toba Zayata Yore, Tidua, one.
ani jela ani kulna ngala kulna deni dagi yeshidogi tsikti. Tanda nga yuna.
Yore.
Oh, lasso.
Nekurgo Manaka Kamare.
Uh-huh.
Kazan.
Oh. So
Daga Ishin do Tiniore. Sem Tona Ishi Imbena, Sangijin do Mitsuji.
oh, really?
Mitsuji, Dusher of the Gombarchas, Semni Ishin Ju, Sangijin do Matsuljis, Matu Sangis, Jambaji, you hit the Lato something Gorwa. They kept on to something to go Marwa. They kept us sometime, not an Gula Ranjinirite, Luburu Tima Selsona, Chukuchar Gorwa. Jena Chiron Talia Yomare, you kept us some tango and Dicton, they kept us some tani, Tandan Susu. And be Simiranjin la Tima Mainza, Tima Fangu imbaji Tonina. Tini Chukusin the Tima Sem de Ran Sem Tomo the Wachatona, Taran Chukuris Sungorwa. Toba Zayan Yale Yakore, they only Kichogre, Nima Kayu Keba Mambu Sungore.
And so actually the accomplishment of Dharmakaya, achieving the Dharmakaya, is something actually that many of the different traditions speak about. And there is this verse that says, I prostrate I offer prostration and venerate to the Dharmakaya state. And so it's something to be aspired to. And the Dharmakaya state, so it's through the purification of the mind stream that one achieves the Dharmakaya state. So this is what is like venerated, and that this is what is aspired to. And the many of the Buddhist, the different schools of Buddhism speak about this process of purification of the mind to achieve the Dharmakaya state. And that's, so to see this as something as an achievement, is something that is spoken about in scripture, but as we saw also as a reminder before, the Buddha in a scriptural support from the Buddha, it said that this nature of Buddha that is sought is to be sought nowhere outside of oneself. Although we're saying I prostrate to Dharmakaya nature and we aspire to achieve Dharmakaya nature, the Buddha himself said that this nature is to be found nowhere outside of oneself, but rather is this process of purification for achievement.
내가 이신도 됐다요. 야, 다 추즈도 karma 추차도.
So it's a big subject, but we're about 10 minutes after 6, Geshe-la said, so maybe we're out of time.
Thank you.
I won't ask any more questions then.
Save them for next time.
Yeah, I got a good one though.
Okay, do people have time for one more? It's up to Geshe-la.
No, it's not, I'm being facetious, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
No, but I do, but it's not, it's not, nothing's important. It's because it's not permanent anyway.
It's not truly existent.
Nothing's truly existent anyway, so it obviously isn't a big issue. So,
Well, and I think if people have questions that that weren't answered, if you can refine them or think of ways, like more examples, like we can offer also, like if you can equate your question or compare it to something else, isn't it, like and we can keep refining to try to get
right.
Get it more refined,
Well, actually, that's exactly, but I know it's one of these things that would launch us into on another orbit. So
because sometimes that really helps to have an example. So if you can think about it over.
I'm remembering teaching with the Dalai Lama where this subject was approached, years ago, and I remember at the time thinking, oh my God, these are like all end of the road story questions, because the people asking, they hadn't done any study or, this is just, they were just throwing questions at them, and, but it was right along the subject, and I'll make a note to ask next time, because I think it will, we don't need to circle the planet again tonight.
Okay. Yeah. So kongla ani kandoshi ani yanayang ani dene dontro di ringla samlo tangne dene dontro jema kerangla ani yare.
Yeah. Keranga dundra jema khataya me zisholata. Tiwatan.
Tingone.
It's still the same planet. It never seems to change. This is what's weird. Okay, I don't know. Anyway. Yeah, nothing's truly existent, but nothing truly existent is true. So anyway, I'm leaving you with that. I'm sorry. No answer necessary. That's just my philosophical 2 cents worth there.
Oh, ani jela ani Geshe-la.
Dundra jema keranga tiwatan khataya me zishotan dikorila.
Then there's never a chance that next week wouldn't be okay to ask him a question.
Of course. Yes. We just keep circling the planet. Or the sun. We keep circling the sun, I guess.
Really so good, Geshe-la said. These questions are excellent. Really, really good.
But kazang ngoma kurshagyata tirin karoji mazokaji chungsonate. Peke chemburda. Neke chembure. No take it tanta pe tiny do you be set as some pe mambutangore. Peke chembure.
And, you know, we look back at some of the quotes, especially, you know, the quotes the Buddha said about phenomenal existence just being an aspect of our own convention and so forth. We talked about them before, and they're, you know, even coming up now, you know, very, very, very pertinent and important to this subject matter. You know, they're so important. They really get at the point, but we, you know, we just got to keep at it.
We're still here.
세상 나겔 깨나 텐들 삼당 거래스 숭도아.
Nagel.
나겔 깨나 텐들 삼당 거래스.
And so also it's, you know, there's this saying that as an antidote or to counteract pride and vanity, that one should think, really turn to the details of dependent arising, interdependence.
나겔 텐들 탁보 인상 나겔 카타야 마즈도 이수자 거라.
And that's because when you start to get into the details of interdependence, you aren't going to feel so much like a know-it-all anymore.
Are you talking about me or?
No,
Oh.
the general you. No.
겹스 거와 죽으네. 말이라다. 지단내려 거래.
Yeah.
I'm joking.
지단내려 거래. 나겔기 님보다 나겔만 또스 니버춘다. 방야게 레고 마다. 가슴비 님보. 나겔 또스 슈준다야라 텐들 곰 거래스. 도차 슈준다야라 미두보 곰 거래스. 지단 슈준다라 잠바 곰 거래스 거래. 봉야 봉인들라 배 송이마 송이 타와 짱짱마도 진다 요 말에. 봉인 몰라. 디졸라 타심비 님보들 또스 골차 교회를 슈 또스 짜야.
And so, you know, as mentioned here, as an antidote or just to kind of counteract pride and vanity, you know, we study and, you know, attempt to study interdependence. And, you know, this, it does tamp it down a bit, but it's not going to completely obliterate it or thwart the future emergence of it. It's just a remedy to suppress it. In the same way for lust and desire, we meditate on something as ugly and disgusting, and for hatred, loving kindness, and so on and so forth. But again, those are temporary things to suppress and tamp down kind of these negative moods and emotions. But if we really want to cut them out altogether, there's nothing else that, you know, the only way to do that is to really directly see emptiness.
Yeah. 야다.
So maybe we,
다음 화제고라.
shall we do our dedication prayers?
장조 숨조 림보체 마케 빠나 긴교지 껴와냐바 메바 코네 콘도 배워라서 가리라에 코르 진간데 벤다데와 말린중 제레지원 텐진가 소이 자베시테 파도 땡교르지 잠불 포에 치터케 군도 잠보테 테진데 테다 군기지소 달로 외환데다 탐제 rab동고 주숨 12개와 탐제게 뭐 강라 초동 다진게 자원 내군장 상부 주치라도 뭐라기.
Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. In the land encircled by snow-white mountains, the source of all happiness and benefit flows in your person, Chenrezig Tenzin Gyatso. Remain until samsara ends. Just as the Bodhisattva Manjushri attained omniscience, and Samantabhadra too, So now I dedicate these merits to train and follow in their footsteps. As all the victorious Buddhas of the past, present, and future praise dedication as supreme, so now I too dedicate these sources of my merit for all beings to perfect good actions.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wonderful.
Thank you.
밥 먹고 삼당 와야 될게 전부 다.
Now you have to think a lot, and that's important. Think about it.
Always.
Yeah.
Thank you, Geshe-la. Thank you,
Thank you,
Diane.
thank you.
Of
Thank you
course.
for
Have a
everybody.
good
yes.
evening, everybody.
Okay,
Thank
you
you.
too. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.